Hey everybody, video here for you today. Wanted to make one more Ancient America video before I go across the pond to the UK. Also talk about Ancient Egypt in the video coming up. Those are taking a little while. I have some stuff to read, but today let's go down to a site lost to history. This is a little controversial down here, but earthworks in Ohio. This is the Stub Earthworks down here. This is Hamilton Township, Ohio, on the Little Miami River down here. South Lebanon, Hopkinsville, a few other cities in the nearby area, but right down here, there was an ancient earthwork that was removed, possibly in the shape of a serpent, and it wasn't small. It was right down here, removed for a mining company. We'll read about that. And then just east of here, there was a large enclosure called the Smith Earthworks. Today, I think both of these sites are known as the Stubbs Earthwork. The Smith name has just been kind of lost. Right down here, strange earthwork. Over here, an enclosure. This is what it looked like. On this point out here, this is a drawing, a diagram of what was here. Some people think there was a curled serpent's tail at the end of one of these earthworks here. Here is that enclosure. Today, these have been totally lost to history. Little Miami High School is the site of that giant enclosure right in this area. Here it says the Stubbs Earthwork, also known as the Bigfoot Earthworks in the Warren County Serpent Mound, was a massive Ohio Hopewell culture archaeological site located in Morrow. I guess that is the town here in Warren County, Ohio. The school down here, I guess the entranceway, encloses a raised up area that was once a mound. They say there's chambered rooms below here. At least that's what archaeologists said a while ago. And over in this area, there was a strange effigy. I showed you that earlier. Let's take a look from an aerial photo taken a long time ago of this area here. This site was not visited by Squire and Davis, who mapped out a lot of these earthworks in Ohio, but you notice how whatever this is out here, this effigy is on a point, and that's kind of similar to Serpent Mound. But this is an overhead shot of what it looked like. And this, I believe, is when it was partially reconstructed. And what was at the end of these originally? Some people said that there was a coiled tail here. But does that represent a snake? Well, it just might. But then again, it might not. Just reading a little here, it says, Ohio's world-famous Serpent Mound in Adams County is doubtless the most spectacular and best-known effigy mound in the United States. Since it was first described by Squire and Davis in 1848, there has never been any doubt about its aboriginal nature, and Putnam's work in the 1880s seems definitely to have identified the Great Serpent Mound as the work of the Adena people. Far less well known and far more controversial is Ohio's other Serpent Mound, the Warren County Serpent Mound, also known somewhat prosaically as the Stubbs Earthworks. First surveyed by Colonel Charles Whittlesey in 1839, the Stubbs Earthworks were not described in print until 1851. In that year, Whittlesey published a brief description and the first map of the site in the Smithsonian Contributions to Knowledge. Although Whittlesey noted a possible effigy mound in the eastern portion of the Stubbs Earthworks, he did not suggest that any portion of the earthwork represented a snake effigy. It took 40 years for the Serpent Mound theory to gain currency, but it has been alive and wriggling ever since. In 1892, several newspaper articles reported that what has hitherto been regarded as an earthwork is now shown to be another Serpent Mound, famous as the one in Adams County. Harlan F. Smith, who examined the Stubbs Earthworks that summer, was quick to respond in a short note entitled, Not a Serpent Mound, the title making his position quite clear. His field map has been published by another detractor of the Warren County Serpent Mound and agrees closely with the western portion of Whittlesey's map. The large eastern portion of the Stubbs Earthworks could no longer be traced, having been reduced by cultivation. Matters rested here for about 15 years until 1908, when the redoubtable theologian and armchair archaeologist George Frederick Wright entered the fray by announcing the discovery of a new Serpent Mound in Ohio and its significance. In a subsequent issue of Records of the Past, which he edited, Wright published a sketch of the Stubbs Earthworks drawn by Dr. C.W. Metz in 1892. This is the first map to indicate a coiled tail in the expanded head of the supposed serpent effigy. Unfortunately, Metz's map is highly inaccurate in many respects, so that it is a moot point whether his map is more reliable than Whittlesey's. It says this issue went back and forth until 1938, when John Holden of nearby Morrow, Ohio, restored the serpent effigy to its presumed original form, and that's what you're seeing here. This altruistic but misguided deed effectually destroyed any possibility of determining the relative accuracy of Whittlesey's or Metz's map from the nature of the earthworks itself. In 1954, the Ohio Indian Relic Collector Society published a report on the Warren County Serpent Mound, concluding the Stubbs Earthwork did indeed represent a second Ohio Serpent Mound and urging that the site be preserved. Whittlesey and Smith were discredited largely, it seems, through misreading of their accounts of the earthworks. For example, Whittlesey's honest admission that his survey was made under circumstances that did not allow of a minute of measurement of all parts of the work. This map was drawn after a brief visit to the site and viewing under the most adverse circumstances, both with respect to the weather and topographic conditions. The map has been found to be vastly inaccurate, and that was the map that I showed you at the beginning. So what did this thing look like originally? There was said to be a curled tail, and you can kind of get an idea of some circular formation down by what might be a tail, but this is kind of lost to history since the original form has been totally lost to history through a reconstruction, and then the site was totally wiped off the map by a mining operation. Here you can see on this diagram done by Whittlesey over 150 years ago, out on this outcrop, just like Serpent Mound effigy is on. What he shows doesn't look much like a serpent, but here, this pic from overhead, when this mound was restored, this looks a little bit more like a serpent. The coils here, and then possibly a tail down here. There was said to be a pit down here. Maybe this could have been the head area, who knows, but there was pits found by the head at Serpent Mound also. The debate on this went on for over a century. What this actually represented seems some original diagrams might not have been done very well. Was this a great serpent effigy? This was about 1,900 feet long. The one at Serpent Mound, I believe, is about 1,350 feet long. So that's a good mystery there coming from Ohio. This is just south of Fort Ancient. Now, the ancient enclosure that the school now sits in, there was a huge wooden enclosure that was found. Post holes were identified. They say it was right by the school's grandstand, so you can only assume it was made right down in this area here. Here's the diagram, what they call the Great Post Circle, 172 posts. I have read different accounts of what the diameter of this thing is. One says about 240 feet, the other says about 270 feet, but a massive structure here found where the football field is, I believe at the high school here. Here on Ancient Ohio Trail, it says just west of the village of Morrow, the new Little Miami High School marks the site of the Stubbs Earthworks, once one of Southwest Ohio's grandest geometric earthwork complexes and one of the earliest to be destroyed. An irregular mound remains in the school's circular driveway, covering the remains of a complex, multi-chambered building, whatever they mean by that. In 1998, Dr. Frank Cowan and his team from the Cincinnati Museum Center discovered about where the school's grandstand is now, pulse molds from a giant 270-foot diameter wood hinge, the first large timber construction of its kind known from the Hopewell era. And there's also one of these wood hinge type constructions at the famous site of Cahokia in Illinois. Radiocarbon dates of these post holes figured they're about 1,800 years old. This is the best estimate for the age of this monumental structure, indicated that the large pulse circle and the subsequent earthen embankment dates to about the latter half of the 2nd century AD. There's a diagram with all those post holes found near the football field of that school. And you see here how close Fort Ancient is to the Stubbs Earthworks. Let's take a look at what was found at Fort Ancient that a lot of people don't know much about. I'll try to leave a link to my Fort Ancient video, but that's a pretty fascinating place in Ohio. some embankments, some stone mounds. Very impressive site here. You see those stone mounds right there. But right across the riverway here, overlooking this way, you notice this place called Camp Kern right over here. There was a large serpent effigy found right down in this area here. Let's just take a brief look. Here is the website. I will leave the link to below. This is called the Kern Effigy. This is under 100 feet long, but it's made of all stones here. I've seen those in other parts of ancient America and Canada, but this appears to point to the summer solstice sunrise here. That is an alignment, the same as Serpent Mound, the famous Serpent Mound, but the summer solstice comes up through a little niche on Fort Ancient here. So that stone effigy must be part of the site, even though it's across the river there. This here is a pic, I believe, from the 1980s when the Kern effigy was originally discovered and excavated and researched. Here's an old blurry pic of the Kern effigy, as it is called, a serpent effigy made of stones. Here is a more current look, but serpent symbolism was prevalent throughout this area of ancient America, that is for sure. Stubbs site is also about 18 miles away from the Mariemont wall. Some people think this is a giant serpent effigy overlooking the river here. There is definitely an earthwork here. Some people say the head of it was down by the swimming pool down here. Here we are up on the street, and there is still some raised areas here, part of that mound. Some people say this is just a wall, but this is very much like the Serpent Mound here, what is left up here at Mariemont. Here's a diagram of what people think is a Serpent Mound effigy, kind of lost to history. The head down by the swimming pool down here, but this is also on the Little Miami River. Looking at this diagram done in the 1800s here, admittedly not done so well, but some of these directions here could point to a solstice day, that is for sure. So this was in an area where serpent symbolism was certainly used. There was a stone serpent effigy up at Fort Ancient. This is about 45 miles away from the famous Serpent Mound site. Serpent symbolism was certainly used by this culture. It was a main part of their mythology. What did this represent? Well, that's a big question here. I think we have to assume that this reconstruction is pretty close to the original size and shape. But what did this represent? Could this be a serpent? Well, I'd say maybe. Here is a serpent effigy made out of mica that was found at a site I have not yet talked about that is only about 15 miles away. Here's an early diagram of Serpent Mound. You notice it's out on kind of a rocky outcrop here at the Stubbs site. That's where this mysterious earthwork is, right here, kind of on an outcrop. Here is a newspaper article. Let's just read this. Here's a story from August 1st, 1892. News of the state, dispatches from different Buckeye towns, an ancient Serpent Mound, one of the greatest of American antiquities discovered near Fort Ancient, the snake nearly 2,000 feet long. Lebanon, Ohio, August 1st. A very important archaeological discovery has been made in Hamilton Township. It has been known for a long time that there were evidences of the mound builders' monuments on old Stubbs farm, but from the peculiar location and varied characters of the fields, they were not identified until Dr. S. Scoville discovered that they were part of a single earthwork, the Serpent Mound. Professor Putnam of Peabody Museum has verified the discovery and pronounces it one of the greatest of American antiquities. And it goes on here. I will leave this link below, but this is highly controversial, and some people still say today that this was never a serpent mound. But I think we have to listen to both sides of the story here, look at all the ancient accounts, and just try to figure out what makes the most sense. That is a little history of the Stubbs Earthwork. Pretty big enclosure here. Strange geometric form found on this outcropping. Some say it might be a serpent, but when archaeologists were here in the 1800s, part of this area here was covered in forest, bad weather, a lot of stuff growing on the surface back then. They couldn't get a real good site description or a map drawn. They just did rough estimates. Here is what it looks like. Here is a reconstruction of that effigy that some say is a serpent. So that is the Stubbs Earthworks found right down in this area. Little Miami High School comprises some of the area. Was there a serpent effigy at one time found in this area? Well, That's all up for interpretation. And if you live in this area, maybe you can tell me what this is right here. This is just a large, huge mound right here. Is this a landfill? That just caught my eye. I'm just curious. That's a video on one of many ancient earthworks found in Ohio, the Stubbs Earthwork. Bit of a mystery there. Hope you thought that was cool. And you all have a very nice day.